US President Donald Trump has postponed a Tuesday military strike on Iran to give ongoing peace talks more time. Negotiators are racing against the clock as Pakistan passes a new revised conflict resolution plan from Tehran to Washington.
President Donald Trump says the United States is holding off on a possible military strike against Iran, saying Gulf nations urged Washington to give diplomacy more time as serious negotiations continue with Tehran. Trump stressed that the US would not allow Iran to obtain a nuclear weapon, but indicated he hopes a diplomatic solution can prevent a wider regional conflict.
We're not going to let Iran have a nuclear weapon. So I was called by these three countries plus others, and they're dealing directly with our people and right now Iran. And there seems to be a very good chance that they can work something out. If we can do that without bombing the hell out of them, I'd be very happy, please.
The comments come as indirect talks between Washington and Tehran appear to be making progress, despite ongoing mistrust and continued tensions across the Middle East. Iranian officials say they are reviewing US feedback and have already sent a revised 14-point proposal to Pakistani mediators. The new draft focuses on trust-building measures to end the war that began with US and Israeli attacks in February. Despite a ceasefire reached in April, tensions remain high. Iran's foreign ministry says it approaches the talks with deep skepticism, citing Washington's track record. Tehran also dismissed repeated US threats that military action could resume if negotiations fail. Disagreements also persist over a key economic issue. Iranian state media claims Washington agreed to waive sanctions on Iranian oil during the talks, but a US official flatly denied that claim, calling it false. Meanwhile, global energy markets are on edge. Oil prices are climbing over fears of prolonged supply disruptions, particularly through the vital Strait of Hormuz.
Tehran says it has forwarded its revised counter-proposal to a US draft in which it has laid down Iran's conditions for a peace agreement with Washington, including ending the maritime blockade and removing of sanctions. Turaj Shiraliliu from Iran has the details.
Iran's Deputy Foreign Minister Kazem Gharibabadi has announced the major points of Tehran's latest version of conditions to reach a peace deal with the United States. According to a spokesman of the Parliament's National Security and Foreign Policy Committee, Ebrahim Rezai, the senior diplomat declared Iran's terms in a meeting with the committee's members on Monday. The MP quoted Gharibabadi as saying Iran has demanded that war must end on all fronts, including in Lebanon. US forces withdraw from the region surrounding Iran. The maritime blockade be lifted, nuclear sanctions be removed, and Iran's assets, frozen since 1979 Islamic Revolution, be released. Also on Monday, Foreign Ministry spokesman Ismail Baqai said that Iran has sent its new 14-point counter-proposal to the US via Pakistani mediators. Without elaborating on the details of Iran's draft, the spokesman said Tehran received Washington's response to its previous proposal last week, despite US statement of dismissing Iran's conditions. He stated that Iran's nuclear program is not on the agenda of negotiations, stressing that war damage compensation is an issue which Tehran has been seriously demanding. Meantime, Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi met with Pakistani Interior Minister Mohsen Raza Naqvi, during which they discussed bilateral ties as well as Pakistan's mediation between Iran and the United States. According to official sources, he told the visiting Pakistani official that while Iran is serious about diplomacy, it will not miss any opportunity to enhance its defense readiness. His position was reiterated by President Masoud Pezeshkian, who stated at a conference in Tehran that Iran would not yield to pressure from any foreign power, reaffirming his administration's commitment to engaging in dialogue with dignity. Turaj Shiraliliu from Tehran for A News.
Greenland says progress has been made in talks with the United States over the island's future, but insists it is not for sale. US Special Envoy Jeff Landry met Greenland Prime Minister Jens Frederik Nielsen and Foreign Minister in the capital on Monday. It comes after the US President Donald Trump repeatedly expressed interest in acquiring the territory. Greenland's leaders said they were seeking constructive solutions with Washington but rejected any possibility of annexation or purchase. A fragile ceasefire between Israel and Lebanon is under growing strain as Beirut says the death toll from Israeli strikes have now crossed the 3,000 mark. Fresh attacks across southern Lebanon and the Bekaa Valley are raising fears the conflict could spiral once again, despite international efforts to uphold the ceasefire.
Lebanon's health ministry says more than 3,000 people have now been killed since fighting between Israel and Hezbollah escalated in early March. Officials claim that at least 7 people were killed on Monday alone in strikes carried out across the country, despite a US-backed ceasefire extension announced just days earlier. Among those killed was a senior figure in the Palestinian Islamic Jihad movement after an Israeli airstrike targeted an apartment building in the town of Doris in eastern Lebanon's Baalbek district. The conflict intensified after Hezbollah launched rockets into Israel following an Israeli strike that reportedly killed Iran's supreme leader. Since then, near-daily exchanges of fire and airstrikes have continued to deepen regional tensions. Lebanon and Israel agreed on Friday to extend their ceasefire by 45 days, with negotiations expected to resume in early June. But Lebanese officials say the violence has continued, with more than 400 people reportedly killed since the ceasefire first took effect on April 17th. The US brokered agreement allows Israel to carry out strikes targeting what it describes as Hezbollah military activity. Lebanon, however, says the ongoing attacks are undermining efforts to restore state control over weapons held by armed groups. Israeli strikes have continued to hit towns and villages across southern Lebanon and the Bekaa Valley, leaving dozens dead in recent days and casting fresh doubt over whether the ceasefire can hold. Regional and international mediators are continuing efforts to prevent the conflict from escalating further, as both sides prepare for another round of negotiations next month.
Cuba has issued a sharp warning to Washington after a report claimed Havana had acquired military drones and discussed possible attacks on US targets. Cuba's foreign minister vehemently denied such claims.
Cuban President Miguel Diaz-Canel says any US military action against Cuba would lead to a bloodbath with incalculable consequences for regional peace and stability. His comments came after an Axios report, citing classified intelligence, said classified intelligence suggested Cuba had acquired more than 300 military drones and discussed plans to target the US naval base at Guantanamo Bay, US military vessels, and Key West, Florida. In a post on X, Diaz-Canel said Cuba poses no threat to any country, including the United States, but has what he called an absolute and legitimate right to defend itself against a military attack. Foreign Minister Bruno Rodriguez also said Cuba has the right to self-defense under the UN Charter and international law, accusing those seeking to attack Cuba of using false pretexts. On the streets of Havana, residents echoed the government's defiant tone.
I know for a fact that Cuba is a strong country. We Cubans are very brave, and we're not going to back down. If they come, they'll have to fight, because Cuba will fight back. That's what I can tell you. My country, whether we're hungry or not, no matter what, will fight back. They'd better not come, because there's going to be a fight.
There must be an agreement between the two sides to talk and negotiate whatever they want. And Cuba must also enforce its laws, do you understand? But they shouldn't invade Cuba. Cuba will defend itself at all times, but it will never hand over the country. It will never hand it over.
The warning comes as Cuba faces worsening economic pressure after the United States cut off its energy supplies earlier this year, leaving the island with severe fuel shortages and limited electricity.
Authorities in California are investigating a deadly shooting at a mosque in San Diego as a hate crime after 3 people were killed and 2 teenage suspects were later found dead from self-inflicted injuries.
Police say 2 teenage gunmen opened fire outside the Islamic Center of San Diego shortly before noon on Monday, killing 3 men, including a security guard. San Diego Police Chief Scott Wall said officers later found the 2 suspects, aged 17 and 19, dead inside a vehicle from apparent self-inflicted gunshot wounds. Authorities say all children attending a school inside the mosque complex were safely accounted for. The FBI has joined the investigation, which police are treating as a possible hate crime. Investigators are still trying to determine what led to the attack and whether another nearby shooting incident may be connected. Residents gathered outside the mosque following the shooting, expressing grief and concern over rising anti-Muslim hostility.
It's just sad that someone died today. It's very sad, especially in the mosque. They didn't do anything at all, and they do not deserve that. And I just feel so bad, and it's actually very I don't feel good at all about it.
I think that they went in there when they knew Muslims would be in there. They went in there looking for people gathering there for religious reasons. And I don't think that the mayor, Todd Gloria, is doing enough to condemn the hatred towards Muslims.
And it's a terrible situation. I've been given some early updates, but we're going to be going back and looking at it very strongly. Yeah, please.
Police said the security guard who was killed may have helped prevent even greater loss of life during the attack.
Tensions between Russia and Ukraine continue to escalate, with both sides reporting fresh strikes targeting critical infrastructure and industrial facilities. Meanwhile, concerns are growing over the security of Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant as Moscow and Kyiv exchange accusations amid stalled peace efforts.
Ukrainian authorities said a Russian drone strike damaged vehicles at an enterprise in the northern city of Chernihiv on Monday. Officials said a fuel truck and another vehicle were heavily damaged in the attack. Firefighters carried out cooling operations at the scene following the strike, while no casualties were immediately reported. Meanwhile, Russia said it carried out a massive retaliatory strike on Monday, targeting enterprises linked to Ukraine's military-industrial complex, energy infrastructure facilities, and military port infrastructure. In a statement, the Russian Defense Ministry said the strikes were conducted in response to Ukrainian attacks on Russian territory. Russian Deputy Foreign Minister Mikhail Galutzin told reporters in Moscow that there were no signals from Kyiv regarding the next round of peace negotiations, adding that Moscow remains in constant contact with Washington on the issue. In a separate statement on Telegram, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said Ukraine's strikes on Russian energy infrastructure were having a significant impact, claiming many companies had been forced to reduce oil production and shut down dozens of oil wells.
In just recent months, Russia's oil refining has dropped by 10%. It is also important to note that Russian oil companies are being forced to shut down their oil wells. This is even more significant. Given the nature of Russian oil production, this is what hurts them most, apart, of course, from losing money.
Meanwhile, the head of Russia's state nuclear corporation, Rosatom, warned that the situation around the Russian-held Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant in Ukraine was approaching the point of no return due to increased Ukrainian attacks in the area. The Russian-installed management at the plant, Europe's largest nuclear facility with 6 reactors, said Ukrainian forces had attacked the site for the 3rd consecutive day.
A rapidly spreading Ebola outbreak in Central Africa is triggering international concern, with the World Health Organization warning the virus may already be circulating far beyond the current confirmed cases.
The World Health Organization says a rapidly expanding Ebola outbreak in Central Africa may be far larger than currently known, raising fears of wider regional spread. Emergency response teams are being deployed across Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo as authorities struggle to contain an outbreak of the rare Bundibugyo strain of Ebola. The World Health Organization has classified the crisis as a public health emergency of international concern after infections spread into Uganda and reached the Congolese city of Goma. UN officials say more than 482 suspected infections and around 116 suspected deaths have been reported in Ituri province since April, while laboratory testing has so far confirmed 8 cases. The outbreak's true scale may still be unknown.
You will have seen that yesterday, the World Health Organization said that the Ebola outbreak in the Democratic Republic of the Congo and Uganda constitutes a public health emergency of international concern, highlighting the high risk of further spread and the likelihood that the outbreak may be larger than currently detected. The outbreak involves the Bundibugyo strain of the Ebola virus, for which there are currently no licensed vaccines or specific therapeutics.
Investigators say the first identified patient was a healthcare worker who died in Bunia after suffering fever, vomiting, and hemorrhaging symptoms. Officials believe the virus may have circulated silently for weeks in conflict-hit areas where insecurity and weak healthcare systems continue to hamper surveillance.
This is a severe and potentially devastating outbreak, and until the outbreak is over in Africa, it will not be all clear everywhere.
US officials also confirmed that an American infected with the Bundibugyo strain will be transferred to Germany for treatment, alongside 6 people considered high-risk contacts. At the White House, US President Donald Trump said the outbreak remains centered in Africa.
Well, thank you very much. Go ahead, Ebola. Ebola, you said Ebola.
Yeah. Should Americans be concerned about Ebola?
I'm concerned about everything, but certainly am. I think that, it's been confined right now to Africa, but it's something that has had a breakout.
The WHO has meanwhile airlifted nearly 5 tons of protective equipment and emergency supplies into the region to support overstretched medical teams.
We'll take a short break now, and when we return, we'll discuss the latest developments involving Russia, Ukraine, and the wider geopolitical implications of Putin's visit to China. Stay with us. Welcome back to A News. The Kremlin says negotiations regarding the war in Ukraine could resume after US President Donald Trump suggested that recent Russian attacks on Kyiv may have delayed efforts toward a peace agreement. The developments come as Russian President Vladimir Putin visits China for high-level talks with President Xi Jinping, with both leaders presenting Moscow-Beijing ties as a stabilizing force within an increasingly turbulent international environment. The moment highlights the complex intersection of diplomacy, military pressure, and shifting geopolitical alignments surrounding the war in Ukraine. Now let's bring in our guest. Anna Evans, political analyst, joins us from Lisbon, Portugal. Anna, welcome to the program.
Hello.
Now, Anna, the Kremlin now says negotiations on Ukraine could resume. So how do you read this shift given recent military escalation?
Well, it is a narrative shift, first of all, because we know that the Kremlin tends to do this mix of high-intensity attacks on the field and then saying that it is always willing to do peace negotiations. So this is a tactics and in the longer-term a strategy to put maximum pressure while always conveying the narrative that Russia is willing for peace. So it's more of the same tactics, maximum pressure and, narratives of peace.
Okay, now Donald Trump suggests Russian attacks on Kyiv may have delayed peace efforts. How unusual or important is public criticism like this from Washington at this stage, because Trump hasn't been all that critical of Russia?
Well, this is also, again, the usual narrative and counter-narrative. Each side tends to blame the other side for the lack of peace. Each side tends also to prepare and strategize on the field whilst doing narratives that always blame the other side. And so, again, we see more of the same. We see that the Kremlin is strengthening its position, not in terms of winning much further terrain, but in terms of making its presence on the field as intense as possible and maintaining the combat alive, while saying that the peace talks are close by. And Washington is also playing with the narratives, with the triangular relationship with China. So this is always an aspect to take into account, very important one: China, Russia, US, this triangular feature that plays this war.
Do you think these latest comments possibly also in part a response to international pressure?
Well, what we've seen throughout the war, throughout these really unfortunate years, is that, for example, European pressure really has not had much success. So many sanctions, rounds of sanctions implemented by the European Union, so many dialogues and threats and coercion, and in terms of the economy and financial leverage of Russia, but in the end, nothing has really worked. So in the end, Russia keeps selling its oil to China, and they keep sharing really important, very critical information on the operational and technological equipments of Ukraine and those that are provided by the West. And so we don't see much change, and hence Ukraine is targeting oil infrastructures, because here, yes, in terms of Russia's oil, that's where there can be some decreased leverage on the Russian side if the oil export capacity decreases.
So let's stay on the Putin-Jinping meeting here. It comes at a sensitive geopolitical time. What message are Moscow and Beijing trying to send through this meeting?
Well, Putin and Xi Jinping, the two presidents, what they're telling the world is that, notwithstanding the very recent visit by President Trump, China and Russia keep their alignment. So we've heard often that China and Russia have these very special friendships, and that they are, the closest friends. Well, I wouldn't say that. I would say that China and Russia have aligned interests vis-à-vis the US and Europe and their West coalition partners. And so what they're doing here is telling the world that their relationship remains intact. And as it is, with the war going on in the Middle East, undoubtedly China needs Russia more than ever to supply oil. And so this, while the Middle East conflict is going on, the oil from Russia is more important than ever. And so this is an alignment of interests, but as we saw with President Trump's visit, China also needs to talk to the West. The trade and the industrial interests between China, US, and Europe are too important to be left behind. And so there has to be a balance here between talking, dialoguing, and what in reality can be done.
Okay, Anna, we're a little short on time. Thank you so much. It's a pleasure as always. Thank you for your analysis today.
Thank you.
After the break, we'll look at the key stories shaping the region. Stay with us. Welcome back to A News, and now we turn to our regional stories. Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan has approved a memorandum of understanding with Ukraine on the establishment of a joint customs council, according to a decision published in Turkey's official gazette. The agreement signed between the Turkish Ministry of Trade and the State Customs Service of Ukraine aims to strengthen customs cooperation between the two countries and outlines the framework and scope of the Council's activities. The Joint Customs Council is expected to enhance coordination on customs procedures, facilitate trade relations, and support closer economic ties between Ankara and Kyiv. Six people have been killed and several wounded after a series of shootings across southern Turkey on Monday, according to local authorities. Officials said the suspect first killed his former wife before targeting a restaurant and several other locations, opening fire at civilians along his escape route. Among the victims were a restaurant owner, an employee, a teenager, and a truck driver. Police and law enforcement units launched a large-scale manhunt using helicopters and drones to search the area while setting up checkpoints on nearby roads. Germany will deploy a Patriot air defence system to Turkey as part of NATO security efforts, the German Foreign Minister said on Monday during a press conference. The deployment, expected to begin at the end of next month, will include one Patriot battery and around 150 German soldiers, replacing a US unit. Germany's Defence Ministry says the deployment is planned to remain in place until September 2026.
Pratikte de şöyle bir husus var.
Azerbaijan President Ilham Aliyev has spoken to Euronews about the country's growing role in Europe's energy supply and its expanding cooperation with international partners. He also highlighted Azerbaijan's reconstruction efforts in post-conflict areas and the importance of diplomacy in supporting long-term energy projects.
Azerbaijan's President Ilham Aliyev has highlighted the country's expanding role in Europe's energy security, its investment in renewable energy, and its large-scale reconstruction projects in post-conflict territories, in an interview with Euronews TV. Speaking on Azerbaijan's growing energy exports, President Ilham Aliyev emphasized that cooperation with Europe is expanding steadily.
10 members of the European Union are our clients, and in total 12 countries from Europe are recipients of Azerbaijani gas. The number of countries is growing. The number of requests for us to start cooperation is growing. And fortunately, we made our homework with the pipeline infrastructure and also with the upstream. So now the level of production is going up. Very soon, probably in the beginning of next month, we will report about the beginning of gas production from the new field. So it's a win-win situation. We need a premium market, which is Europe, and Europe needs alternative source of supply, which is Azerbaijan. So we combine our efforts and established a very fruitful cooperation with the European Commission.
Azerbaijan president noted that ongoing Middle East crisis does not seriously affect country in terms of supply chain. Aliyev also stressed the importance of diplomacy in enabling long-term energy partnerships.
From point of view of our own energy projects, no, we are on the safe side. And always, as you mentioned, advocate for diplomacy. Without diplomacy, we wouldn't have been able to deliver our resources to the markets. Because we had to go across the countries to have good relations with neighbors of the neighbors, establish a multilateral format of cooperation, create a win-win situation between producers, transitors, consumers, so everyone obeys the rules and everyone gets profit.
Outlining Azerbaijan's domestic reconstruction efforts, Aliyev detailed ongoing infrastructure development and renewable energy expansion in post-conflict regions.
So electricity, number one. So far, we already commissioned 307 megawatt of hydropower, and 340 megawatt of solar power is under construction right now. Mm-hmm. So this will be enough not only for Karabakh and Eastern Zangezur, but to the much broader area. Also, connection of electricity grid to the whole country was organized. 75 kilometers of tunnels, out of which 70 kilometers already commissioned, and 500 bridges, 435 of these bridges already done, railroads, schools, hospitals, so all goes in parallel. And first years of reconstruction, mainly we invested in infrastructure. Now we mainly invest in housing. And the city plans, smart city, smart village concept, plan for every village, all that is being done.
The President said these efforts are part of a broader strategy, combining infrastructure development, sustainable energy, and modern urban planning in Azerbaijan's reconstruction drive.
At the World Urban Forum in Baku, Azerbaijan is presenting itself not only as a participant, but as a country shaping the cities of the future. The Azerbaijan Pavilion at the Urban Expo exhibition showcases post-conflict reconstruction, green energy initiatives, and smart city concepts to an international audience. Discussions held throughout the forum are also expected to highlight new approaches to urbanization, climate challenges, and sustainable development. Our Narchichek Jahangirli has more.
At the 13th session of the World Urban Forum, the Azerbaijan Pavilion has officially opened at the Urban Expo exhibition. It is the largest national pavilion at the exhibition, covering 1,500 square meters. Pavilion presents Azerbaijan's modern urban planning projects and its approach to sustainable development. Visitors can explore displays about Azerbaijan's urban development projects, the cultural heritage of İçeri Şehir, of environmental initiatives, tourism opportunities, and examples of modern architecture. A special focus is placed on reconstruction projects in the Karabakh and East Zangezur regions. The pavilion highlights smart city and smart village projects being developed in the liberated territories, as well as efforts to create a green energy zone in the region. There is a strong focus on post-conflict urban planning and restoration processes throughout the liberated regions. The pavilion also features conference and networking spaces, virtual reality experiences, tourism and cinema corners, masterclasses, and areas dedicated to Azerbaijani culture and national cuisine. During WF13, several sessions and discussions will be held at the pavilion. Topics include the Baku Master Plan 2040, digital transformation in energy systems, migration and urban management, and climate-related urban challenges.
Now staying on the World Urban Forum, attention's turning from ambitious declarations to real implementation as African ministers and international partners work to define concrete priorities for the future of rapidly growing cities. Our Aytan Shukurova has more.
Day 3 of the World Urban Forum in Baku is shifting the focus from promises to implementation. Ministers, UN agencies and African institutions are meeting to discuss how to turn the Nairobi Declaration, which adopted earlier this year during the Africa Urban Forum, into concrete action. The discussions center on some of the fastest growing urban challenges in the world: housing shortages, land access, infrastructure gaps, climate resilience and urban financing.
It's an opportunity for our different countries to be able to go over the African Union Forum statement and to also share our vision individually in individual countries as far as the Vision 2063. Which is mostly being able to build focus on climate control, resilient homes, and making sure that a home is more of a dignified tool rather than just an asset for the future.
We will have Francophone and Anglophone countries, Kenya, Ghana, Nigeria, Mali, Democratic Republic of Congo, Angola, and many others. I'm working in the Democratic Republic of Congo, and we are here with the Minister of Urban Development of this country. The main issues there are informal settlement, issue of mobility in the urban areas, and also the issue of infrastructure. On those issues, the discussion are going to be around financial, but also on technical issues, the development of the urban plans, because there is a lot of issue of land occupation and land planning.
Unlike many high-level forums, today's meeting is designed around adoption rather than debate, with participants expected to agree on implementation priorities and a unified African position ahead of the July 2026 UN review of the new urban agenda. Ayten Şükürova, İlkim Mehdiyev, A News.
The World Urban Forum is also creating a new regional partnerships beyond urban policy discussions. During a special session titled Cities at the Heart of Connectivity, Azerbaijan's historic city of Shusha and Turkey's Black Sea city of Trabzon officially expanded their cooperation. A protocol granting the two cities sister city status has already been signed. The forum will host an international conference on youth and decolonization, bringing together representatives from 22 countries this week. Let's go to this story for more.
The rule of my country, Morocco, is that they try to involve youth in all the processes. They made them not only a status, but also a decision-making person. We give a lot of value to youth right now because we see that they are very intellectual. They want the best for their country. The rule is that youth should be involved. We should be influenced to make a better country, better situation for every social class, to not marginalize poor and prefer the elites, and we should break this issue that we had from the colonization before.
A discussion on climate and housing resilience with a gender perspective has highlighted the growing importance of civil society participation in shaping urban policy and decision-making. A panel discussion brought together representatives from government institutions and members of the public to discuss urban resilience and inclusive decision-making. Speakers emphasised that women are among the most affected by climate change and homelessness, while participants engaged in an active and constructive debate on the importance of including civil society voices in urban policy decisions. Meanwhile, Ukraine and Azerbaijan are holding talks on the restoration and reconstruction of war-affected areas, including the implementation of joint infrastructure projects in Irpin. This was stated by Ukraine's Deputy Prime Minister.
We have a very fruitful cooperation with Azerbaijan, and here with us also, please come to me. This is a representative from Irpin, Angela Makeyeva, the secretary of Irpin City Council, and Azerbaijan assists us to rebuild some objects in Irpin, and of course for us this is very symbolic that we are here and to have such conversation also with governments.
Azerbaijan and Georgia have agreed to deepen cooperation across energy, transport and regional connectivity following high-level talks in Baku. The agreement came during a meeting between Azerbaijani President Ilham Aliyev and Georgian Prime Minister Irakli Kopakidze, where several key deals were signed.
Azerbaijani President Ilham Aliyev met with Georgian Prime Minister Irakli Kopakidze in Baku on Monday, with both sides focusing on expanding cooperation in energy, transport and regional connectivity. The visit took place as part of Kopakidze's trip to Azerbaijan to attend the 13th session of the UN World Urban Forum. both leaders stressed the importance of strengthening the strategic partnership between the two countries. President Aliyev said his recent visit to Georgia helped strengthen bilateral ties, while both sides stressed the importance of expanding cooperation in energy, transport, and regional connectivity. A series of agreements were signed during the visit, covering the supply of natural gas and electricity to Georgia, as well as electricity transit through Georgian territory to Turkey. The documents also included the protocol confirming the completion of modernization works on the Baku-Tbilisi-Kars railway project. In addition, an operational agreement was signed between the state oil company of Azerbaijan, SOCAR Midstream Operations, and the Georgian Oil and Gas Corporation. It defines the operating terms for the Georgian section of the Western Route export pipeline, including the Supsa oil terminal and related infrastructure. The sides also agreed to resume daily passenger train services on the Baku-Tbilisi-Baku route, starting from May 26th. Officials said the meeting further reinforced strategic cooperation and highlighted efforts to strengthen regional energy and transport links.
As trade and transport links between Central Asia and China continue to grow, so do concerns over regional security. Meetings in Astana, officials from across the region discussed cross-border crime, cyber threats, and the risks linked to expanding logistics routes. Our correspondent reports.
Growing trade between Central Asia and China is bringing new security concerns to the region. From cybercrime to smuggling and drug trafficking, governments are facing risks that increasingly move across borders. Those challenges were at the center of talks in Astana, where Kazakhstan's President Kassym-Jomart Tokayev met with interior ministers and public security chiefs from Central Asian countries and China. Speaking at the meeting, Tokayev said stronger economic ties and major infrastructure projects will require closer security coordination. He pointed to the Trans-Caspian international transport route, which is becoming increasingly important as global trade routes shift, but also creates new risks linked to smuggling and the illegal movement of drugs and weapons. Cybercrime was another major focus. According to the Kazakh president, criminal networks are becoming more technology-driven, while cybercrime has evolved into a multi-billion-dollar global industry. Central Asia's position along major transport corridors makes the region increasingly exposed to such risks. Artificial intelligence was also part of the discussions, with concerns over how the technology could be used by destructive groups. Tokayev called for closer coordination between regional law enforcement agencies, including stronger information sharing and integrated databases. The cooperation format dates back to 2024, when the first meeting of interior ministers from Central Asia and China was held in the Chinese city of Lanyungang. Since then, countries have expanded joint training programs and professional exchanges, particularly in cybercrime prevention. Fariza Kalimurzina, Almaty, A News.
China says it has discovered a major new rare earth deposit in its cold northeastern region. The discovery comes as competition intensifies worldwide over access to strategic resources essential for the future of high-tech industries. Mahnur Maktoum has more from Beijing.
China has announced a major new rare earth discovery in its icy northeastern region, a development that could further cement the country's dominance over global rare earth supplies and processing. Chinese media reported that the newly identified deposit contains significant reserves of strategic minerals used in electric vehicles, semiconductors, defense systems, and advanced manufacturing technologies. The discovery was made in northeast China, an area known for its harsh winters and rich mineral resources. Officials and experts said that the find could strengthen Beijing's long-term resource security at a time of intensifying technological competition with the United States as well as the Western economies. China already controls the majority of the world's rare earth refining and processing capacity. The announcement comes as countries worldwide are racing to secure stable supply chains for critical minerals essential to the green energy transition and high-tech industries. Analysts say that the new discovery could reinforce China's leverage in the global rare earth market and deepen its strategic advantage in key industrial sectors. Manir Makhdoom, A News, Beijing.
And now in other news from Europe, the cruise ship at the centre of a deadly hantavirus outbreak has docked in Rotterdam. Here's our correspondent with more on that.
Welcome to This Day in Europe, where the cruise ship at the center of the deadly hantavirus outbreak has docked in Rotterdam, triggering the final phase of a complex international containment operation. The MV Hondius arrived in the Dutch port Monday after becoming the focus of a multi-country health response triggered by an outbreak of the rare Andes strain of hantavirus, a virus usually linked to rodent exposure, but one of the few known strains capable of limited human-to-human transmission. 3 passengers, a Dutch couple and a German national, have died. 10 cases have been identified in total, including 8 confirmed and 2 probable infections. Dutch health officials say 25 crew members and 2 onboard medical staff disembarked under controlled conditions, with no one showing symptoms. The 2 Dutch crew members, a doctor and a nurse, are isolating at home, while the remaining crew, mostly from the Philippines, will quarantine in mobile units set up in Rotterdam. The ship itself will now undergo a week-long disinfection, with cabins linked to infected passengers receiving special treatment. Health authorities stress this is not a broader public health threat. Unlike highly transmissible respiratory viruses, hantavirus requires close and prolonged contact for person-to-person spread. Charling Leenstra, the head of the Dutch Coordination Center for Communicable Disease Control at RIVM, said, quote, "There's no risk for Rotterdam and that all those exposed are under monitoring and quarantine." Still, officials are not declaring the crisis over just yet. With an incubation period of up to 6 weeks, health agencies across several countries continue monitoring former passengers already dispersed around the world. Dutch Harbour Master René de Vries said, quote, "We didn't see this coming, that a ship that ran into trouble in Antarctica would dock here in the Netherlands. 10 days ago, we weren't ready for that, but we set up an entire quarantine village in just a few days." For A News, I'm Anita Sharma in Arnhem, Netherlands.
After the break, we'll discuss the significance of the meeting between Turkish Foreign Minister Hakan Fidan and German Chancellor Friedrich Merz and what it could mean for Turkey-Germany relations. Stay with us.
Inside Politics delves deeply into the heart of global issues shaping our world today. Join me for your go-to source of political analysis from across the region and beyond.
Welcome back to A News. We now shift our focus to a regional story for discussion. Turkish Foreign Minister Hakan Fidan has met German Chancellor Friedrich Merz amid efforts to strengthen coordination between Turkey and Germany on regional security, migration, economic cooperation and broader geopolitical developments. The meeting comes at a time when Europe faces mounting strategic challenges linked to the wars in Ukraine and the Middle East, energy security concerns and shifting political dynamics across the continent. The talks also underline Turkey's continued importance as both a NATO member and a regional actor whose role increasingly intersects with European security and diplomacy. Let's bring in our guest now. Mr. Furkan Yolcu, Middle East and security expert, is joining us from Sakarya, Turkey. Mr. Furkan Yolcu, welcome to the program.
Hello. Thank you for inviting.
thank you for joining us once again. Now, the meeting between the two leaders, well, Hakan Fidan, Foreign Minister, and Chancellor Friedrich Merz, it comes at a time of complex geopolitics. How important are Germany-Turkey relations today?
Well, this is going to be the third of the strategic dialogue that's been happening between Turkey and Germany. You know, since Merkel, it was like a bit of a tough road between Turkey and Germany because the two parties had discrepancies in between, and it was hard to meet in the middle way because Germany wanted to triumph European Union over anything, and transatlantic pact was already in jeopardy with the United States having Trump as president, and he sort of prolonging the U.S. interests over others. So Germany and Turkey affairs had been really on a tough sketch for the recent decade. But this strategic dialogue was for this. It was to revert back the Turkey-German affairs to its, original sort of, I can say, because the two countries went into a world war together. Yeah, so the two countries has already shared a very long history between each other, and then it's really important for both countries to be leading in their region and cooperating in terms of controlling energy trade, controlling human traffic, controlling migration, controlling customs. In any sense you can imagine, Turkey is a very strategic partner to Germany, and though it wasn't like that for the last decade because of the recent changes in Germany, in German state affairs, because of the president changed, the prime minister changed, the ruling party changed. So it was a sort of a fluctuating road for the both parties. But now I think both parties are awake in a way that they both know they are important to each other, and there is no other way than strategic cooperation in between.
Okay.
I think that's the current state.
Okay, and let's have a closer look at the security aspect. Europe's facing pressure linked to Ukraine, the Middle East, and migration concerns. How central is Turkey to Europe's broader security calculations?
Well, in all of the European Union, documents that we see from the Research Council, from the European Council, because there are a lot of security institutes in European Union and in European Council as well. So the strategic documents that we have from these institutions and the European European Council apparatus that publish strategic documents on a regular basis always put Turkey under the spotlight and having emphasis on Turkey as a sort of buffer role in terms of providing the security that Europe needs, in terms of controlling migration, controlling terrorist traffic, militant traffic, whatever you want to call it. So it's not actually Greece and Bulgaria who is protecting the borders of European Union, but it's actually Turkey who is on practice protecting the European borders, both from south and east. It's not only the east part of the European Union. Obviously, the power authority that Turkey has in the naval parts of the Mediterranean Sea, it's really important to control traffic, and the naval deals between Turkey and Algeria it's also very important to protect the southern European borders from migration that's been distorting the European society from top to bottom. So I think security-wise, there's this, and there is the alliance part of it, which means the defense cooperation. In terms of, the defense industries has been cooperating recently, but then there was this embargo on Turkey from the European Union countries because Turkey wasn't really supporting the Ukrainian party in the war on a practical basis. Although on the discursive level, President Erdogan numerously told that they were promoting the Ukrainian integrity, territorial integrity, but on practice, since Turkey wasn't sending arms and details to the Ukrainian part, they were practically putting an embargo, and most of the European countries just abided with that.
Okay,
the operations on YPG also caused the embargo, but now these are lifted, and I think there is another layer to the defense cooperation with the industries coming.
Okay, Furkan, that's all we have time for this hour. Thank you so much for joining us. I appreciate your analysis and time.
Take care.
And you're up to date with world news for the hour. Thank you for watching and stay tuned to A News for all the latest developments.